Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show. And it's my favourite time when we pop all the way down to the South Africa and join the wonderful Errol Musk. How are you, Errol?
I'm good today. Thanks very much. You
Good.
too?
And you've been kept busy. Everybody's nibbling away at you, demanding your attention.
Yeah, it doesn't stop. You know, people come with all sorts of plans and ideas. And look, I mean, it's something I've had all my life. I mean, but now it's, you know, more, I'd say. People want, the inventors come with things they've invented, the perpetual motion machine type D. you know, and things like that. Yeah, so a lot of that sort of stuff. A lot of scammers.
Oh, good heavens.
Who actually are ridiculous. I mean, their scams are ridiculous. But anyway, you got to give them credit. For trying.
How do you spot the scammers?
Well, with each one, I mean, you don't know. Well, the ideas they come with. Being as I'm like a scientist or scientifically trained, I mean, I know right away, and I have an inherent ability for that kind of thing. Whether something can work or not. I mean, I know. And sometimes it's difficult to explain to people that what they are doing is not actually what they think they're doing, and they fight with you and so on. So no, it is. No, it is. I say no, you're not. This is not what you think it is. But I mean, at the end of the day, I feel sorry for people. They a lot of people they have they hope. They're hoping for something and hoping some hand will reach down and lift them up. And you know, sometimes they come to me with schemes, and I say, well, what do you actually want? And they don't even really know what they want. And then you eventually say, well, would you like $15 million? Oh yes, I'd like that.
Yes, thanks so much.
I say, well, you have to show how you're going to spend that.
Yes.
Oh, oh, really? Can't I just get $15 million
Yeah, there's
and
there's a
just pay it
holiday
out
in
to
the
myself?
Barbados I want to go on. There's a yacht I've been looking at.
I mean, it's such a good idea. Surely I get paid for just having the idea.
It, it,
No, I'm
it,
afraid
it
you
it
don't.
is incredible. Well, we had in the UK, we've had this with a big international investment summit talking about great ideas, and that was Starmer and his Starmageddon. They've been boasting that they got 63 billion pounds and nearly 38,000 jobs for the UK. They got 6.3 billion in UK data centers, as well as a world-class UK Imperial College London. And they were touting this for a long time. All the media, however, have turned around and say, well, hang about, there's one person who wasn't invited. Where was Elon Musk? What was the reason for that?
Well, of course, I mean, I don't know if Elon would even go to such a thing. A lot of those things are, again, sort of a whole lot of hopefuls getting together and, you know, uh, silly people. And funnily enough, a lot of those people do get, some old lady or some old man to give them money, and and then afterwards people are crying, and saying they ran away with my money. But I mean, it was obvious, that if you just asked someone, they would have told you. But again, people get thick-headed, or rather, not dog-headed, or whatever the right term is, and they get convinced, in fact, that this is really something, and and so people lose money. They lose money, and people lose their money, and they come to these events that you just described. Now, the thing is, if you have a really good idea, you definitely don't go and spread it at some conference. I mean, that would be crazy, even if you've patented it. But I mean, you definitely. I try to explain to people, if you have a good idea, the first thing you've got to do is take out a provisional patent. This gives you 1 year's cover, and it doesn't have to be terribly. You don't have to go to a lawyer or attorney. You can do it yourself. It's the way it works is the genus, the general idea, and then the species, a short description of what it is you're talking about. And if you are clever enough to make the invention, surely you can put down the gist of what it is that you think you found or discovered, and that should cover you. And taking out a provisional patent like that to an attorney I don't know, it costs you about £5,000 or something. But if you go do it yourself, it costs you about £50. You see, at the patent office. And so that's what I tell people to do. Just go to the patent office, ask for a patent, provisional patent application, fill it in and describe what it is you've got and hand it in, £50 or something like that, maybe less. And you're covered for a year. And people, and unless you've been really stupid in what you've described, people will have a great deal of difficulty in taking that from you. But the other thing is, once you've told anyone about something you've invented, so-called, that is immediately making the other person a co-inventor. So if I, let's say, discover the secret to zero gravity, and I tell you out of interest, so that you say to me, gee, what a brilliant thing you've discovered, you immediately become co-inventor. And the people don't understand that. And later on, when I go and file the patent, let's say, assume it's a successful patent, then you could come along and say, sorry, I knew about this. I'm a co-inventor. And then they have to put you on the form. You see, because the whole idea of a patent is that you're the only one who knows about it.
Yeah.
And if there's other people, they become co-inventors. I try to explain this to people. They don't seem to understand it. I say to people when they come to me with their ideas, I say, have you got a provisional patent on this? And they say no. And I say, well, you do realize that by telling me about it, I become a co-inventor. And they don't quite grasp what I'm saying. Now, a good example of that was a man who bought my home, in which Elon grew up. It's a very nice home. It's now the residence of the European ambassador to the Southern African zone. And so it's a very fine home. Anyway, he bought this home for me, lock, stock, and barrel, furniture, the works, paintings, everything. After my and I divorced, I'd had enough of that place, so I sold it. And this chap was quite interesting. He was the man who invented plastic bags.
Oh, right.
And plastic bags were invented in Pretoria, in a lesser sort of suburb called Silverton. Rather, sort of like, what's the other side of London called again? Brixton or something.
Oh,
sort
yes.
of like Brixton, And he invented the plastic bag. And he did this with a plastic extrusion machine, where you put a little pellet in, tiny little pellet, and you blow it out as a plastic bag. And the plastic bags then took over the whole world, And so he told his brother, his name was Tom, and he told his brother Solly. And so his brother saw all this. And then eventually Hoogst came along and bought the patent from him. And then this became another issue because Hoogst basically didn't tell him the real value of his patent, because the plastic bags began to be made all over the world after that. Before that, just paper bags. I'm sure you remember, just paper bags. And of course, paper bags are expensive and almost sort of a bad thing because you're cutting down trees and so forth. But anyway, Hoogst was also got into trouble because they hoodwinked this poor Tom. And then, oh God, now what's the name of the company? In Dallas, they bought the thing finally for $8 million. But this was in 1977 or something. So you could call it $800 million, you see, right. or something, $500 million today's money, $500 million. And of course, once the patent was so obviously one needed and used, along came Sonny and said, I knew all about it as well. So Tom had to put his brother, and they had big fights and arguments and everything, but he was forced to put his brother on as a co-inventor and share the income. Yeah.
No, it's so important. I mean, patents and the different rules in different countries, territories.
Yes.
You need to have
an inventive step.
Yeah, you need that inventive step, but also, as you say, you need to keep it secret, because if there's prior knowledge or prior art and so on and so forth, it could actually could eliminate the whole availability of the patent. So it is best if you've got something, make sure you do it properly and get the proper advice. But the investment summit, what that was to encourage companies to come to the UK and basically to set up their business over here, to employ people and so on and so forth. And they invited the great and good. And it reminded me of what you said about why Elon switched his allegiances from Biden to Trump, because Biden made the same mistake and didn't invite Elon to the electric car summit that he had when Elon was the best in the world.
By far, yes, by far, yeah. Well, stupid. I mean, but of course he didn't forget to invite him. He did it on purpose.
Yeah.
He did it on purpose. So, these people try. I mean, if you've had a modicum of success in your life, and I'm sure you have, and you always find the same thing happening. I mean, take parties or so-called Saturday night parties. If you were too successful with the girls, you found next time somebody threw a party, the chap didn't invite you because because you'd sort of taken off his girlfriend or something. But no, I mean it's life. It's life. I mean, people are jealous, and of course, that's life. I mean, it makes life interesting.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. If they'd invited Elon, they would have. Of course, he would sort of dominate the thing, and that's probably also perhaps they didn't want that. I don't know. I I I am somewhat wary about taking things to England, which was the hub of invention, Scotland as well, for so many years. I mean, you just think about it, and it came from some guy in England, that even DNA, I was just thinking of that, and Rutherford, and you name it, you just name it, Lister, Jennings. I mean, it just goes on and on. Fleming, it just doesn't stop.
Right.
It all comes from England. And but these days, the English are sort of, like a fruit that gets overripe. you know, it's like sort of got too ripe. So now you have
Well,
to sort
well,
of
well,
reinvigorate it,
but
cut off the old
we want the
leaves.
UK to be the hub of invention, as you say, and Elon's the Edison of our time. I mean, how would he view the fact that Starmer didn't invite him?
Well, he looks at them already as stupid, a stupid bunch, and not a particularly talented bunch. And I would too. And so I'm not even, I wouldn't, I mean, they're just a bunch of idiots. I mean, what on earth would they not invite Elon for? What do they think they're doing? Are they stupid or what? They must be really stupid. But I mean, you get some people who've got dope stamped on their forehead, dope, you know. So when you see them, oh, okay, somebody pre-doped you, so I can see, But no, no, I mean, it's just plain stupid, plain stupid. And then pretending that my crowd will get along just as well. It's basically like at school, forming the first team, whatever it is, soccer or rugby or something. And then the chaps who didn't get, into the team or something, or the B team at least, forming their own little squads and going off and making their own A and B, C team, and nobody wants to play with them anyway. So that's ridiculous. No, no, no. The other thing about England is we are for a long time now. Since Thatcher improved it a great deal. England. I mean, I left Germany once from a factory in Germany, and I'd been in a factory even in East Germany at that time, in communist East Germany, where you basically could eat off the floor. You could actually eat off the floor. I mean, you could empty your, spaghetti and mince or whatever it is onto the floor and eat it off the floor, quite frankly, or your pizza or whatever. And I was asked to go to England to a factory there, and I went over to England to see this factory. They, brought me over quickly on an overnight or early morning flight, and it was dirty and grubby, and everything was wrong, and you wanted to say to me, look, this isn't how a factory's supposed to look. That weren't you? You've just been with me at the Messe in Hanover, which is, by the way, the biggest industrial show in the world. I don't know if you know that. Annually, I think it is, and or maybe biannually, and it's such a big show that they have a railway. They have their own internal railway line, and I would have thought. I thought these guys, having seen what you see in factories there, they would understand what you expect to see in England. Subsequently, I did go back to England. I mentioned it earlier on an earlier show, and I met people there to do with television distribution. And things had jacked up. They jacked things up a bit. I think it was that I remember. Anyway, after Thatcher came in, they jacked things up a lot. She just said enough of this crap, but at the moment, I'd say that England tends to be a place where if I'm going to open a business there, I'm going to start having to argue with the people that I'm employing and giving them an income, and they are arguing with me and fighting with me. I don't want to go there. I won't go to England. You know what I mean? I have a feeling that that's the kind of thing I might expect there.
But this is the
Um,
problem that they're introducing all sorts of employees' rights in the new bill, and we had a few people. We had Charlie Mullins, who's a very famous plumber over here. He sold his business for about 140 million, called Pimlico Plumbers, and he said he was driven out of the UK by Starmageddon because it wasn't pro-business. The
yes.
taxation here was too high, and the employment rules and regulations too restrictive.
Well, yes, you've got these people who get into government because they can't do anything else. And then they think they're the lesser intelligent people. And then they want to come along and put their finger in everything. And of course, at the back of their mind, nearly all of them, throughout my experience in time, is that they have an idea that they can actually pick up a little bit of a backhander here and there. And yeah, so you've got this in a lot of the governments today, where you've got these somewhat useless people who've never had a job or anything, and then they start making regulations. They go in with, £200,000 house that they've got a mortgage on, and a few years later they're worth a few £1 million, and you wonder, well, how did that happen? You know, um, I mean, the bar woman in America, what, AOC or something? Is it ACO? Oh, it's AOC. She was a bar lady. Now she gets a salary. I know the salaries for congressmen is about $170,000 a year, which is a fantastic salary. Um, and she's now worth something like $30 million. She's only been there for 3 or 4 years. So she, went in with nothing, and suddenly she's worth 29 or $30 million. No, no, I mean, so these people in government are curse. Let's face it. It's a difficult thing, because at the end of the day, one does need someone to keep records and to do the various things. I mean, what I saw Rick Harrison, of Porn Stars, give a talk at. It's quite a well-known guy. He's got the Porn Stars channel,
Right.
which is very, very interesting channel. People they come in with something they think's not worth anything. It turns out to be worth quite a lot. Anyway, Rick was saying that he was supporting Trump, and he said that we want to just get our kids to learn properly, and we just want the government to get out of the way of everything. Get out of our way, because you don't do anything to help us. I have the experience as a pilot, for example. We have the Civil Aviation Authority in South Africa. Now, I suddenly have recently discovered in the last few years that no one at the Civil Aviation Authority is a pilot or has ever been in the air, or rather may have been in the air on an airline or something, but hasn't flown an aircraft. And here I am, having owned something like 40 aircraft, and I'm a twin-rated pilot, multi-engine rated pilot, and they are telling me what I can do. They are giving me orders, how I can, what I must do, and what I can't do, and all that stuff. They have no knowledge of flying. They're terrified of flying. When they do come to the airfields, and you want them to step into the plane, they just say no thanks, because they're scared it might burn or blow up while they're in it. It's terrible, and that's now what we call the CAA.
Yes.
And I've said to them, if you're going to charge me every time, and of course it's all about paying something. For you're going to charge me for everything. What are you going to do for me when I'm up in the air and I lose an engine or something? Can I call you, or can I phone you or something? You'll need to give me some tips while I'm up here. What do you mean? We don't know anything about aircraft. We can't tell you anything. Well, what the hell are you giving me all these instructions for then?
Yeah.
You know,
And,
what are
and,
you
and
doing?
that's the problem. We've spoken about this beforehand, is sort of over-regulation kills innovation, doesn't it?
Well, yes, of course. Absolutely. Um, I think of, I'm trying to think of, well, where it starts. I remember when I was a student, when I was a schoolboy, I had a chemistry lab at home, which I funded, or rather filled, with chemicals from the school's chemical stores. The science laboratory at school. I took it all from there. A lot of the stuff from there, anyway. And being a prefect, or whatever you call it, and all that, I was sort of able to do that kind of thing. I remember on one occasion, some mercury had been missing from the lab, from the school laboratory, and I had it in my jacket pocket. I was standing in the hall. I was up on the stage with the principal, and he was saying, "Whoever's got this mercury, better hand it in." And it was in my pocket, and I wasn't going to hand it in, and because I had uses for that. But Yeah, so you know, if they had made it at school that you could go in after hours, or you could have an afternoon thing where you could have a go at things, I think it would be much better. No. You weren't when you walked into the class at school. It was all regimented. You weren't allowed to touch anything. You could only do this. You could only do that. Obviously, when you get to university, the chemistry becomes a little easier. They're a little less difficult. But no, regulation starts at a silly stage because they think they're protecting you. I remember this principal saying, "Whatever you do, don't drink the mercury." Yeah, no, I'm going to drink the mercury. Yeah, sure, with some soda and ice. You know, no, they're really stupid.
It is good, but it never ceases to amaze me, Errol. Like when they sort of set up these rules and regulations, they don't consult the sort of heavy hitters. I mean, and what happens? So when we had this backlash in the press over here about Elon not being invited to this summit, Peter Kyle, who's the UK cabinet minister, he basically said that Elon would be invited to future investment summits if his companies had active investment programs the UK could bid for. Well, Elon's developing things all over the world, isn't he? They're all very active, aren't they?
Yes, of course. Well, I mean, Starlink is one of the things that they would be able to work with. They should be working with in England, because Starlink's going to take over everywhere. Probably going to be the biggest IPO in history. But yeah, no, I mean, these people, look, that most of these people, like this chap you've just mentioned, are busy feathering their own nest. They're not interested in really interested. They just, feathering their own nest, looking at how they can, get get a nice place to live, in the best, and getting a nice car. And if I do this, and I can, this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about people that I would want to spend 10 seconds, 10 minutes with. I mean, they dull. I found this when I went into politics. I was elected as a city council, the city council in Pretoria, the capital city, expecting to go in there and see a lot of interesting things happening. It was probably, you actually needed tablets to go through the things that you had to do as a council. I mean, it was incredibly dull, and nothing of, only occasionally something of interest, so very, very occasionally. So in reality, people in government don't have much to do, because at the end of the day, what have they got to do? They just sit there at the moment thinking up, let's make up a new regulation that you can't do this, you can't do that. And so you take this incredible, beyond excellent achievement with the Starship last week, where the Starship was brought back to Earth and caught with what we call the tweezers.
Yes.
And anyway, prior to that, in December, there was one in between that as well, was launched, but I was the one in December, and the booster actually separated from the payload, and in the process, it ruptured and exploded, and it was far out at sea. And of course, you had residents in the area saying that they definitely picked up some pieces, and this is not good, and it's going to destroy the environment. So, which is nonsense. So then, it's all aluminium, comes from the earth anyway, and suddenly you've got all these people from FAA and all rushing in. Oh, I've got a new opportunity to make a regulation where somebody will at least take me to dinners and take me to hotels and show me around, and fly me here and fly me there, to get me to say it's okay. I mean, so if I act very difficult and say I'm the one who's turning you down from now on, then I've got a good chance of having quite a lot of attention thrown my way, and it's along those lines. Of course, one doesn't want to go all the way. Obviously, you do need a controlling body. You do need rules and regulations. Usually, these rules and regulations are drawn up right at the start, yeah. And and the people who are doing the very thing it is, whatever it is, motor racing, flying, whatever it might be, they know what is important. They write these regulations in right from the start, and they expect people to abide by them. And it's reasonable to then have somebody a committee, or committee's the worst thing, of course, but a few guys whose job is to keep abreast of developments to make sure that they keep the rules and regulations up to date.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. Well, Peter Kyle was praising obviously Elon's phenomenal SpaceX achievement. We're going to be looking at that a little bit later as well. But Elon was reportedly he responded with frustration about not being invited to this UK summit because apparently they had followed his controversial comments on the recent UK riots, and he felt that might be one of the reasons he wasn't invited. What's your take on that?
Well, I haven't heard anything. I haven't actually been looking. I haven't heard any comment by Elon to that effect that he would. I don't think he would care less, to be honest. I really don't think he would care less. I think he'd probably be relieved because he has a lot of things to do. So, if he's now out of decency and politeness supposed to go to England and show his face at this summit of yours, then he may think it's a good thing to do that and might like the idea of a bit of relief from what he's doing. But actually, not being invited is probably better for him, because he can use his time more effectively, because if you take the return to Earth of the booster for the Starship, it's not like that's the end of the story. There's all the data to pour through to see where things didn't go as well as they should have, and then to prepare the next step. And as I've said to you before, you can't have these things 2 years apart because, the next one, you have to have them a few weeks apart because if you have things so far apart, you're going to run out of lifetime before you can do the things that you want, if you know what I mean. You haven't got time. We're all on a sort of schedule.
Right. No, that all makes sense. Well, I mean, basically, well, at the summit, I mean, this is what Starmer was saying. Look, he wanted to reduce bureaucracy for the reasons that we sort of mentioned, and he promised all this sort of enhanced infrastructure and innovation without compromising safety. So he wanted to sort of fly the flag. I mean, would Elon come, do you think, to a future one, and what would the investment opportunities be?
Well, I mean, he would, out of decency, he's a normal person. If he were invited, as anybody would, they would thank you. That's very kind of you to invite me and give it some thought whether you should go, of course, and then see what it's going to be about. And if he thinks, well, look, it looks important, I'll go, because we're talking about the Starship, but, there are so many, hundreds of innovations involved with Tesla that, from the tiniest new switch or the tiniest new light or the tiniest new diode or something like that to the bigger things. These are all happening all the time. And so, he wouldn't want to not be around. And a lot of times people do come to you with good ideas. Usually they're clever enough to keep the ideas to themselves. And they come to you with an idea that actually has happened with the Tesla battery, and change the whole design of the battery. This was something about 12 years ago, 10 years ago. And so no, I imagine Elon would go. He wouldn't want to be present I imagine he wouldn't want to be present at boring speeches by politicians or something like that. I mean, where they, telling everybody how great everything is or something. But no, I imagine he might want to go. And obviously you'd want to show your face. Elon, if he said everyone who wants to give me their ideas, just queue up. I mean, the queue would be from where's the show in London? Yeah. Oh, well, the queue would be in Liverpool. Start in Liverpool. Queue would start in Liverpool.
Oh no, absolutely. But it'd be fantastic. And as they sort of misunderstood, they sort of say, well, Elon wasn't going to invest in anywhere. Well, he clearly is investing, as you say, and building these huge data centers and various other things. What do you think the biggest opportunity for the UK would be as far as Elon's concerned?
A Tesla gigafactory. Yeah. You see, whether we like it or not, petrol-driven cars there is a limit eventually to how much fuel, we're talking maybe I don't know how far ahead, but there is a limit. And there are other more important uses for the existing petroleum. So for cars, which are, at the moment are probably the biggest user of petroleum, You know, there's so many cars now. I mean, they equal the population of people almost. You know, I think there must be like 2 billion cars in the world or something. But they uh, going over to electric cars is important, and finding ways of generating electricity from as you know, the best possible sources as well. So yeah, I would say every country should in fact by now be looking at having its own gigafactory, including this country and Australia and you know, Brazil should have its own gigafactory, and you know, Russia, France, and so on, because you know they're going to be having to produce vehicles, the new kind of vehicles, as we probably can't envisage what they're going to look like now. It's difficult to imagine, but they're going to look quite different than what we know of cars looking like now. The other thing is the motor cars that are being made by the conventional internal combustion engine places. What are they doing? They're building a car that today is as close as possible to what an electric car does. So you look at it, you buy a new, for example, Mercedes or a new Lexus or something like that. When you drive it away, it's silent, as silent as possible, but not quite. You can almost not feel the gear changes, and so forth. It's got good acceleration and so forth. And to do that, they've got boiling oil and boiling water and explosions taking place in front of you, which would blow your mind if you actually could see what was going on in front of you. And if any of that stuff splashed out on you, you'd get burnt so badly. So that's what's going on in a combustion engine. It's actually somewhat like 19th century, you know, or rather, you know, Frankensteinish, you know, sort of late 19th century engineering going on. You know what I mean? And of course, you take your electric car, it's as clean as a whistle. There's nothing going on underneath. Nothing. You put your head under there, you wouldn't see anything. You wouldn't see anything at all. You wouldn't even feel anything. You would just see things. You wouldn't just see things. You wouldn't feel anything.
And so a big opportunity there for the UK. I mean, this was
yes.
supposed to be the message. Is basically they were touting the political stability and the optimism about the business environment. They made a mistake in not inviting Elon. I think you
yes.
say even the invitation, I think it was wrong.
Stupid. It's not a mistake. It was done deliberately.
Yeah. What would your mess? I mean, Starmer is an avid watcher of the Andrew Eborn show, especially with your section. What would your message be to Starmer?
I suggest he resign, and they should have an opportunity to elect a new government that hopefully is made up of people who should be in government, you know, and not the crowd that you've got now. That's what he should do. He should resign. Simply resign. There you go. I mean, he's shown that he's not able to be the prime minister. So, you know, he should perhaps move to Czechoslovakia. I believe he was a Russian agent, a Soviet agent in Czechoslovakia as a teenager or a young man. But if he headed out to Czechoslovakia, maybe, or one of the Serbia, or one of those places where they could use his kind of leadership, perhaps, I don't know. But not in England. Not in England. Please. England, the home of the Royal Institute, the home of the Royal Society. Give me a break. Give me a break. You know, no, he must resign. He doesn't belong there.
Well, a very clear message. And talking of taking a break, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Starship and the booster and the captured in the world first. Really exciting time. For now, Errol, thank you very much for joining me.
Okay.